The Institute for Faith and Freedom at Grove City College presents Liberty Mail with the Student Fellows of Faith and Freedom.
Welcome back to Liberty Mail. This is Aaron Jenks.
And Libby Krieger.
And we are here in the underground studio at Grove City College working with the Institute for Faith and Freedom. We are so excited to be back. We just had a long couple weeks of the Faith and Freedom conference, and it was a wonderful time. We had a ton of great listeners, ton of great viewers.
Hope everyone had a nice Easter as well.
And I know we're kind of excited to get back to going. We had a nice break, and now we're
Lots
right
of stuff
back
in the
into
news, too.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So it was hard to pick 3 wins this week.
But the 3 wins I think we have are some of the best wins we've had throughout the semester, and
definitely.
Really motivating to see the cultural wins for conservatism. And to start it off, we have I'm sure you've all heard about it, is that the federal judge in Florida struck down a national mask mandate on airplanes and any national or mass transit. And so we see this take into effect that even straight away when the judge made this ruling that Dallas and Houston went in immediate TSA, took away the mask mandates, and then several other large airports across the country took away the mask mandate. And then you saw flooding through social media of posts of people without masks on airplanes walking through the airports and kind of saying, this is freedom.
I know immediately I saw on Twitter just like you said, a flood of posts about this, videos of people just ripping off their masks and being so excited, and really just like a group camaraderie almost on these planes where they're like, oh, we don't have to wear masks anymore. And like, of course, there are still some people who are going to, and if you want to do it, that's your decision. But what I think is interesting is so U.S. District Judge Catherine Kimball Mizell in Tampa, and she is a appointee of President Trump. And so I think it goes to show how important, even if you don't like the president, but whatever side they fall on and who they appoint as judges really does have an implication for our political system. Even something that's not as high as the Supreme Court, but these decisions do matter. Who they appoint for these positions are really important and have a lot of implications.
Yeah, they really do. And like you said, we're seeing that now from already 2 years into President Biden's administration, but Trump's effects are still with us. And I want to go back to that mid-flight over a couple flights, this one airline, Delta Airlines, said that crowds were applauding and cheering when they got woken up with the announcements that they didn't need to wear their mask anymore. Yeah. It is a return to normalcy, I think, and it's another great step towards, okay, we're not going to be dealing with COVID restrictions anymore. We kind of are done with these draconian laws that we kind of don't like, and they're over-pressing into our lives.
Yeah, well, what is kind of funny, like you said, a small step. I saw a Babylon Bee post about this, and those are satire, but there's often a lot of truth at the root of it. It was saying 5-year-olds have class on airplanes now, so they don't have to wear masks. And so obviously it's a joke, but just goes to show this is only a small step, and we still have other areas in which we need to undo this mask mandate. Like in some schools maybe that still have those kind of rules. And I'm sure flight attendants are really excited about this as well. That's a huge win for them. Just, this is their daily life, and not having to be restricted for years now, I think is a huge win.
The Association of Flight Attendants, it's the nation's largest union for flight attendants, obviously, and they have a neutral position on this mask ruling throughout the past couple of years, but they even put out a statement saying that they're happy that some of their members can exercise their freedoms or exercise what they want to do right now. And it just goes to show that, okay, we can't have these draconian laws kind of enforcing on and taking over our rights.
Yeah, what's interesting is the question comes, did the government ever really have the power to do this in the first place? Obviously, that's a little more of a complicated question. I think there was a lot of confusion at first with COVID. But this was such a huge, like you said, draconian measure put in place for the whole country for years. And after a point where it wasn't really justified by the science, and that was what was pushing these policy decisions the whole time. But really, there wasn't a ton of science to back it up. So
yeah, and there was a limited sense that, okay, this remedy of a masking would not stay for a while, that it was only a partial
2 weeks to slow the spread
solution.
was the line at first, and obviously it's been much longer than 2 weeks.
Absolutely. And I know it's interesting to see that, okay, now we have the CDC saying that, okay, we want the Justice Department to appeal this and kind of flip it. And then you even have the White House coming out and saying that they don't want this court ruling to go into effect and that it should be reversed.
Yeah, they said it's a disappointing decision, according to Jen Psaki, the White House press secretary. But apparently the Justice Department and CDC declined to comment, at least in the article that we are going off of ABC News. So maybe there's been something since, but as of now, they have declined to comment whether maybe they challenge this or appeal the decision. I don't know what happens from there. But yeah, this is a huge win for just returning to a little bit of normalcy. Anything else you have to say on that?
No, it goes with the other kind of wave of, okay, we have restaurants that are opening up. We don't have to get vaccine passports or maskings and all these other areas of life. So it's, again, one small step towards normalcy.
Yeah, exactly. Very exciting.
And so we move on to the second win, and the second win is still out of Florida. The great
state of
Florida.
free state of Florida.
And this one comes with Governor DeSantis threatens to repeal Disney's self-governing power. And so on Wednesday, he approved a bill that dissolves special self-governing status given to Disney, and this status has been given to Disney for over 50 years now. This comes after the company publicly feuded with Republicans over the controversial parental rights in education, a.k.a. they don't say gay bill. Correct. And so the Republicans controlled the chamber and passed the bill by a margin of 23-16. And they're really going after Disney for this whole kind of slew of, okay, we have the one worker we quoted last week, they have pro-gay advocacy.
Yeah, the not-so-secret gay agenda quote.
There we go, yeah. And so now we have Ron DeSantis and the Florida government kind of going right at that. And this is a kind of, I see as a cultural shift in how people either view their, especially media, and how they are viewing, okay, what does this media company have a say in how I'm influenced or how my children are going to be influenced?
Well, in private companies and how they operate within the realm of the political sphere, too. And you're seeing conservatives actually taking and using their political power that they have, exercising it to implement important policy decisions or a cultural shift that they're working towards. Here's a quote against the move by DeSantis, and it's by State Representative Dottie Joseph, a Democrat in the Miami area. The quote is, "Punishing a company for daring to speak against a governor's radical right political agenda is precisely the kinds of thing that we see in countries like Russia and China." So you're seeing the left equate this to an authoritarian measure. But it's interesting because whatever happened in Georgia and like Coca-Cola and with all the voting rights, I think that's kind of an interesting parallel to see how the left totally uses their political power with the private companies and all of that to make a statement on their agenda. But then when conservatives do it, it's authoritarian and it's it's tyrannical and all these
stepping
things.
Over the line, you're enforcing the government arm and you're taking over our rights. And they kind of use that mantra that has been so classically conservative. Yeah, and
if you could imagine the flip case scenario if there was a liberal governor in Florida and Disney was promoting traditional marriage as what it should be, as like the norm, you could see how maybe a liberal governor would try to take that status away from them for not supporting human rights. And that would be the talking point. And you wouldn't see this sort of, oh, this is Russia and China, this is what tyrants do. It would be like, this is a crusade for human rights. But because we aren't on the left, the right isn't afforded the same slack in these instances.
And let's throw out another one. Shining governor takes away special taxing district law codes, 50-year-old law codes from multi-billion corporation. Oh, wait, no, it's Disney because why does Disney need a special district allowing the company to act with decreased taxes when they are a multi-billion-dollar company?
Yeah. Do you think it's just for economic development purposes, perhaps?
And
like,
so that was the purpose.
The justification.
When it first passed in 1967 to allow them to build upon 25,000 acres.
Yeah. Well, and good for DeSantis for saying you have this exemption, if you're going to abuse your position and try to indoctrinate children and push this radical anti-truth agenda, you shouldn't be afforded those same privileges anymore. Like if you want the privileges, then at least be neutral. You don't have to promulgate this radical agenda.
Yeah, and even like without it, if Governor DeSantis came back and just was like, okay, I'm going to reform this old bill that why does Disney need this tax exempt? Okay, yeah, that makes sense, and I feel like it would be still a conservative win and a cultural win for moving towards, okay, government, get away from these private corporations, and we don't want you in here. But now we have purpose, like you said, and okay, no, now you're definitely not going to be deserving of this tax exempt.
What's also interesting is you're seeing, I think, a shift in the political climate in the sense before Republicans were also always associated with like business and corporations, and you think like crony capitalism, that's like the negative side of what Republicans were associated with. But now I think there's like a realignment of maybe more populism versus elitism, and that's more of the defining feature, not even between the parties, but just as like a spectrum of what defines where people are at. And so I think that's kind of an instance where you're seeing it now is the conservative, the Republican, is not on the side of Disney, the private company, just to further jobs. We're actually taking a cultural stance instead of just reducing conservatism to low taxes, more jobs, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. Like home run out of the park kind of
Thank you.
Words of what the conservative movement has turned into, and then also kind of what we see and rising conservatives, whether it's Liberty Mail or any across the country. It's like, okay, we want to fight on these cultural movements or these cultural problems. We want to get away from the old Republican Party being associated with large private ownership. And so we really want to move towards, okay, yeah, we're going to work on schools. We're going to work on what's being taught to your children. We're going to be working on culture issues, and this is kind of a huge win for us. Yeah,
and it's clearly a winning issue. All these culture points, critical race theory and transgenderism, and I mean, this is kind of an outgrowth of that. The swimming issue, all of that are culture issues at its root, and those are the issues that are bringing people to the polls. And it's a return to common sense, is what we've said before. Is it's not really conservative liberal, but just radical and common sense on a lot of these issues. So I do think we're seeing like a realignment, and so that will be interesting going into 2022, 2024, what happens based off that. I think you're going to see a lot of conservative candidates taking these issues and making them the pedestal of their campaign, really.
Yeah, and like to further that, it's almost that, okay, you have these two platforms. You either have, okay, the left platform and the right platform, and which one is going to reflect my reality more? And a lot of the times it seems that in the past 8 years that the conservative platform is more of a moderate platform for most Americans. When they see on social media or any coming out of even Disney a really far left platform, and they're like, that does not reflect any of my personal values. It does not reflect how I want to raise my children. And so, wow, what is more moderate? And then the conservative culture is taking that win.
Yeah, and I think I've mentioned this before, but I do think with all these issues, the left is overplaying their hand. They thought they had the power and thought they had the backing, but now that they've gotten so radical on some of these issues, people are like, oh, I didn't sign up for that. I'm not sure. I might have been like a classic older Democrat or liberal, maybe like a Clinton type, but I'm not on board with this AOC or squad type of policy that we're seeing kind of take over the left wing.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, hopefully you still see that coming from some Democrats, and there are a lot of moderate Democrats who are even pushing back or not voting with this kind of progressive caucus within the Democratic Party.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see. Anything else you have on that, or should we skip to the third win?
I'm excited for the third one. Yeah,
third one, I feel like we have a lot to say. I'm sure most of you have also heard this by now, but Elon Musk recently has been very much in the news for, first of all, offering to buy Twitter. He offered $43 billion to promote this as like a more free speech platform, because a lot of the criticisms of Twitter, as I'm sure everyone's familiar, is that they were censoring conservatives unfairly, and these speech codes that they were enforcing were not being enforced fairly across the board. Instead, we're just targeting political opposition, basically. And so I think it's interesting because he did it in a way that, at least from what my understanding is, because Twitter is a public company, they are obligated to act in the best interest of their stakeholders or their shareholders. And so because he offered $43 billion, which was above market value, they were obligated to take it, or they can open themselves up to action, like a lawsuit, because they weren't acting in the interest of their stakeholders or shareholders. So I think that's interesting. He was really doing it so they would be backed into a corner, and they still said no, which I think goes to show that it's more important for them to be able to keep that political arm of enforcement of speech than to make money.
And how smart of Musk to do that. He understood that. Going back to a couple weeks ago when he puts out polling on Twitter, just that, okay, it was like 92% of the following of a couple million people want this platform to be less censored and more of a freedom of speech platform. Yeah. And Musk even writes into a letter to the chairman of Twitter. He said, "I invested in Twitter as I believe in its potential to be the platform for free speech around the globe." He said, "I believe that free speech is a societal imperative for a functioning democracy." Yeah. And it reflects what the either the stakeholders are wanting and what they believe in also for this platform, and then also what the general sense of Americans kind of want for when a social media platform is kind of the town square for free speech, as so many times we've said here, then it really
it's turned into that.
It cannot be censoring any kind of narratives.
Yeah. Well, and obviously, whenever he's promoting this free speech platform, I don't believe he's saying free speech absolutism. We have no rules. You can post obscene things and blah, blah, blah. I'm sure there's still restrictions on speech, just like there is in every culture, taboos and things that you just don't say in public. But I think you'd see a more neutral position being taken by Twitter, just kind of taking down not as much like conservatives or liberals. Yeah.
Take it down, call to actions, threats, violences.
But not maybe as much content-based discrimination as we've seen from Twitter in
disinformation.
The past.
The era of disinformation kind of wants to get put into a shoebox right now.
Exactly. Everything's disinformation or misinformation or conspiracy, anything of that sort. So you'd probably see less, if Musk was in charge, less of those, what are those called?
I think they're moderators.
Yeah. Or like little stamps on the bottom that it's like,
oh,
you should consider reading this before.
You see it on Instagram all the time, like warning.
I forget what it's called, but
be partially incorrect.
Exactly. Fact checks, basically, but from a very biased point of view. Another thing that Elon Musk recently said, so Netflix just lost, I believe, 200,000 subscribers in the first quarter, and they're expecting 2 million more in the second quarter, which is a lot of people. And so the company's shares dropped 20%, and so he ascribed this to the woke mind virus makes Netflix unwatchable. And I think it's interesting that he even used the rhetoric of being woke, addressing wokeness as within the negative connotation. And I think because I don't think he's considered really as much a conservative culturally, maybe. I've never seen him really stand for pro-life or any of these bigger cultural points for conservatives. But I do really think this is a huge win because he's for conservatism, because he's making mainstream free speech, anti-wokeness, and really just leadership and using the power that you have to combat these issues. So I think that's the win, is that he's making this even for moderates where he has maybe more clout than like a Ted Cruz would, someone who's associated strictly with the right. He has the opportunity to bridge the gap and really represent the common sense ground.
Yeah, absolutely. He has that ability to pull in millions of either moderates or Democrats into not even a conservative kind of into the conservatism movement. But he has the power to pull them into that what he is saying aligns with conservative thoughts. So if we can just bridge that gap,
it's like a new coalition, really.
Absolutely. And again, he's not ever. I've watched him, whether it's interviews with Joe Rogan or interviews on a number of other podcasts or on YouTube. He's very open-minded, but then he never really is like, yes, he doesn't like the label of I am a conservative or I am a liberal progressive. But he makes his opinions in his mind known, which it's so unordinary for any kind of Hollywood or mainstream kind of famous individual in America right now.
Yeah.
And like we said, he's pulling in kind of legitimately millions of either moderates or anyone who has a open mind right now and is against this kind of wokeism that's happening in culture right now.
I think almost anyone who's not on the hard left and the radicals are at least looking at this and being like, okay, well maybe he does have something to say, and maybe there's some ground to that, and some reason for what he's doing and what he's saying. And I think they'd be a lot more open to it, knowing that it's not strictly a right-wing conspiracy. I think he really does give credibility to the side, even though, I mean, we shouldn't need someone to do that, because if what we believe is right, it shouldn't matter either way. But this is really beneficial to have someone in the middle. Yeah,
it's beneficial either way, and it doesn't make the validity of kind of the conservative argument any lesser or anything. If only it adds to it. And when we talk about Netflix specifically for this example, it's okay. Netflix has been coming out with not even a progressive agenda or anything, but they definitely push leftist-leaning.
They had Cuties a few years ago, which was some weird.
Yeah, the film or the documentaries are definitely centered around the social justice aspect of the culture. And
I think I saw one that was about a man giving birth. It was like a picture of this guy who was pregnant. I didn't look into it too much. I should have honestly looked at it more. But you could tell from the picture and the name that this was a progressive, social justice-y, radical thing that they're trying to push. And kids watch Netflix, and I mean, it's who wants to watch that in the first place? Why are we making that so mainstream? And I think the reaction you're seeing from the market really is people don't want that.
So my point is that okay, you have all these kind of films or genres being pushed into what is being watched, and then when you have something like that is controversy, like a Dave Chappelle skit, or something that Netflix goes on strike, or workers go on strike, but then you have all these other narratives that conservatives or viewers or any subscribers look at and they're like, I don't like that. They just scroll by.
Yeah.
Because they understand. They're like, okay, that's what other people want to watch, but not me.
Well, that's why the left is good at exercising that political power, because whenever they have something they disagree with and they feel strongly about it, they make it known. They do what they can to push back. So whether that's boycotting or causing a scene, the right needs to start doing that more. And that's what you're seeing, I think, from some of our other wins, is this exercising of political power. Governor Ron DeSantis doing that in Florida. And we just need that all across the board, because the progressives are going to win if we just sit back and let them win. Well, we have this principled loser mentality where, we're just gonna free speech, or like freedom to do what you want, like as long as you don't get in my way, I won't get in yours. And it's this mentality that's why we continuously lose our ground as conservatives, because we aren't willing to put up a fight for the small things. And that's what I think is changing. That's a huge win. Just kind of in our mindset of conservatism. Absolutely.
And I wanted to look at, okay, so they have their cancellations soared by 800%, right? And so the public statements coming out of Netflix is that, these are because of the war in Ukraine right now. This is stress of oil across the world.
It's probably Putin's fault.
And so, yeah.
Putin's Netflix.
And so anything to push this away. But so that viewpoint probably is responsible for however X percent, but to say that, okay, yeah, that is why.
Yeah.
I feel like there's such a level of naive
and arrogance. I think arrogance,
coming
ignorance,
from Netflix, yeah.
Yeah.
But for viewers or anyone to be like, oh yeah, that's definitely why. Like, take yourself back a minute. Yeah, that can result for any percentage, but definitely we see this cultural movement, and this argument has validity that okay, if we did numbers, it's going to be a good number or a good percentage that falls in. Yeah, you canceled because Netflix is pushing this progressive cultural film on me.
Yeah, maybe Netflix maybe consider it's because you're telling people that men can have babies, and you're making a whole show or movie about that, documentary, and whatever it is. And that's
prepubescent girls in sexual provocative situations.
Yeah, I just think people don't want to see that. And so they're like, well, I'll just stream somewhere else. I'll do Amazon Prime, or I'll do HBO Max, or whatever it is. They'll get
CNN,
cable.
streaming.
CNN or Fox News or whatever it is. Because honestly, there's just much better you can do with your time. Read a book. Listen to our podcast. Anything better than going on Netflix and
hit
Netflix.
The bell.
Yeah, right below Aaron. Hit the bell. Subscribe. Show your friends. Then watching a progressive, radical, gross documentary.
And it's crazy to think about. Netflix has been in our lives and the dominant
Streaming
service of our
it
whole
made
entire
popular
lives.
streaming services.
Absolutely. And so to see them kind of, we see them taking the natural flow of the economy and how, I don't know why, but
Culture?
mine is
Free
going away
market.
from this word. Anyways, but they're losing their power is the point.
Yeah.
Monopoly.
Yeah, I got it. I got it now.
The economy is taking its natural course on monopolies that, and this is the conservative understanding of economics, is that monopolies don't stay forever. And that, okay, maybe sometimes we need the government to intervene through historical precedent, but
Yeah, maybe
majority
big
of the,
tech is like a whole nother beast.
yeah, but majority of the time, the market will take care of these problems,
Yeah.
just reflecting what wants and interests are.
Yeah, what's kind of interesting though about that is what you would expect with the Twitter situation is with the free market. You know, like Elon Musk offered $43 billion, which is above market value. Think if the free market, or not if the free market works, but if people are acting in the interest of getting money, they would have taken that offer because it was the best interest of their shareholders. But in that instance, it was more important for them to have the political power to exercise. So just kind of making that parallel, but interesting to see.
Yeah, it is really interesting and weird how, okay, now Netflix is staying true or holding kind of true to what is precedent in the economics of monopolies. But that now, like you said, when political power comes into play, how does that affect what the
It's a
government
different
does or how the
balancing
government
act.
steps in?
Yeah, whatever they view as more important. So, yeah, well, anything else you have to say on this? Great job, Elon Musk, for all your making conservatism
And I'm sure
mainstream.
we'll talk about this again someday.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Make sure you check out the rest of our videos on YouTube, our podcast, Apple Music, or Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You can find it there. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit the bell somewhere down there.
Subscribe to us, not Netflix.
Oh, did I say Netflix?
No,
Oh.
I'm saying subscribe to us, not Netflix.
Yeah, exactly. Put your support behind us instead of these woke corporations. Yeah, so we'll see you here again next week for another episode of Liberty Mail.
For more information on this podcast or other programs, please visit faithandfreedom.com.